Barakatadinai. Hayni Velevasino, Abraham Lasak, Leaka, Bella, the Giver of Elo, Young Galaxy, Tevin Kanako, Turkakasi Abbas, maybe go over Nebenham, much will be Abba. Malak Machine again, Barakatadinai. Again, Abraham. I take him on Medina, Mechami Timatok Hershey, Mashivarach, Murray de Geshem, the Hope of Cousin Mechami, Rachman Rabin, so make the primary fickle and Matar Mechami Minnesota Alpar. Mikamachabaka, Rosamita Malak Melach, Mechami Smekashua. Benamanat Alachas may seem Barakata Adinai Kaya Hamasi. Kisha can I read Sakanam sex to Vicarus, Mashos Maka Kadisha, Kakas, and Via Kavakarzel, and Viamar. Kaddish, and I suppose, small across the body, the mass of shop in the armory, or convert and Nami Kaima, Jibakakas of Flamor. High, Ixi, and the door, hallelujah, Takadosh, Shukakadosh, Joshua becoming the Kakasala, Barakatani 9, well, Akadosh, Atakan Das Minute, Spinach, and Makakmavina Das, Barakatani 9, Ramena Das, I should be in this second, but Saka, Bashani, Barakatani 9, or Sabi Shiba, Saklan of Niki, Makaniki, Vashana Kilta Sakata, Barakatani 9, Ranan Hamaba Slova, Rain of an interview, Glen Mahan, Kilko Kasakata, Barakatani 9. Well, you show up. If you know the neighborhood, if I should be the Bashak is in the water, like her force, Kiamal, Ramanata, Barakatadi 9, Rebecca, away, I'm going to show up. Baraka Lane, no. I deny Elohim, Estrogen, as this combination of the same tall, Matali Braka, I'll play them, Spain to back, Rection, Seneca, Shumatin Braka, kill some meat, Mataba Rakashanim, Barakatadi 9, Barakashanim, take Abish of Bagler, send him some nice place, but send him from Sini Yakan, back and first hour, you're saying him, Barakatadi 9, basically, I'm going to show up. Shiba Shiftenik, we should have seen it, but kill up 7 minutes, and Nakamaklin, what I didn't know the Hasid Rakham Sedek Mishpat, Barakatadi 9, Malak, Serka Mishpat, the machine Matisi, Holding him cause it, Greg, a live him make a ratio. Malkus for some hair as a curse, my verse, my givers never have a meeting. Barakatadi 9, Shavir from Maklia Zadim. Allah said, you will have seen a basically I'm coming trouble. If it doesn't suffer him, they're going to clean you, and then Rakamaka 9. Zijn te kartoffel kopen ook een kabiams. Zijn cocaïne mag een dan een wisje bij kamatachnu. Barakata adinai. Ishan tak sadikim. Your son make a back touch. This is some sort of shitty part. The case say it's up to Dakar maybe so katakin in there some corrupt in the Balaam. Barakata adinai. But now you shall I as some activity of Dakar may have smack or comes from Shaka. Keep these shores cut from the Kolia. Barakata adinai. That's me Karen Yeshua. Shema Colin, Radina Elohim, Abraham Akmal, the Kata Barak Russell Esposino. Kia Shemet was good in matter of Nakamokina, Kamachvini, Kia Tashamet was called Barakata Adinai, Shemet Tafila. I say, I did not hit the some shame, shepherd of the river, second, Fisher shots for some Yavas, Gabar, son, is there some to meet of last Stralamecha, because I need him to put some Racham in Barakata Adinai, a Maxish Canasal Sea, no demon Akmila. I thought Kilo Clarakanaka, Makan Kushma Sadaka, Kimilan, Vinalach, Yarkulam, Isbarek, Vishamam, Visansation, Kamakini Tamidilam, Bawet, the Kokam to Sala, Dasham, Gita, Elish, Rosina versus Sina Sala Halatai, Barakata Adinai. I told him Kalkan days. Same Sham, Tabi Rakan, Kemaka, Rakan, Shamaka, Rakini Vinukan, Kiaka, Yapanaka, keep your Panakas, I tell him, Trostan Gabascasa, the stock of the Raka, Rakan, Makam, Tavinaka, the Rex Amkosha, a quite of a Kosha, Bishamaka, Barakata Adinai. I break some my shawl, Bashala. Elohina, but I have a saying it. Sadiq of Nakna, Lakatan, Lakna, and Katana. Hello, Kapai. Can't make crab, Shamet and Abisham Namar. By a bird, not Panabikra, the 99 Rakham, and Eric Pamper, because the BMS is a Kasalapi and Miss Abu Hashab Katabana. Because much more vision. Ashrein Elishino, Ajavar Kuchmaka, the Senator Kapakoto Saint Laman Shemaka, Yiskala Viskala Shemeraba, Yama, the Brackers of the Kaku said, the Yatsmak kind of a Karmishikai, the Kaya kind of a Kakobi Shishawa, but Galavis Mankari, the Marame. Hishme Rabba, my Rafi, a little male mice, breakfast of a face fire, some pieces, lady, Sadavi Salavis, with the Kucha Breaku, the A, let me cover Casabishira, such as Casamakamasa, the Rambia, the Marame, take about some of us on the Kabisha, Karamahin, the Vishmaya, the Marame. Yehesh Maarav Mincha, comes from Leni, Vakar Bimaramin, Is the Shal Bimrema, Is the Shalom, Leni Vakar Bimaramin, then Lena Lishabach, Vainako, yeah, can you come up with it? All right. ונאמר ונמח מכל הארץ, ומהדין היחד ישמע יחד, סקדה וסקדה שמי רבה, ויאמה דיברה ויצמח מחנה, יקרב משיחה, וחי יחון וימייכון וחי וכל ביש ישרועל, והגלה בזמן קריב ימרו אמן. כשמי רבה מביירח וירד וממי עלמיו, יספרק וישבח ויספר וישרמן ויסנסה, ויסדר ויסלה ויסלל שמי דקודשה בריקום. Viela Mikover Casa Vishirasa, Tushpakasa Nechamasa, the Miram Biama, Vimmer, Amen. Yehe Shlama Rabba Min Shamaya, the Chaim Tav Malini, the Alkoy Sharel, Vimmer, Amen. Koysa Shalom Bimrema, Viasa Shalom Malini, the Alkoy Sharel, Vimmer, Amen. Atira Mipakapisa, Rishawas Shankisa, Tracevis, Quite a Herd of Armilla, Yakan Pima, Newell. Kazignani, Viaseva, Vaniasa, Niasisi, Vaniasa, Vanislavia Malay, Maxadike, Miajushmaka, Yushamas, Panaka, Makashin, Sunus Mosmaya, Hamil, Committee, the Mind Convention, Rala Hagozera, Makana, Naksham, Merasikas, Berklus, Sharfi, Havelan, Termas, Shamar, at night, I face a man, Sikta, Yakatara, the Adir. Skada, Viskada, Shmiraba, the Alma, Dibraku say, the Amlik Maku say, the Asmak, the Karash, Shikai. V'chayei khan v'yemekhan v'chayei kodesh Yisrael v'gala b'zman kariv yimru amen. Yehesh me rabba mevayrach v'yartu m'mayonaya. V'parei v'shavach v'spar v'shamam v'snase v'sadar v'saler v'salal shmei v'chav v'ritu. V'yela mikol v'kasa v'shirasa tushpakasa v'nechamasa v'miram v'yama v'yimru amen. Yisrael v'yarabanan v'yatumidei v'yachotumidei smidei. Yalko Manchaskin Viarais, TV Asra, Dane, the Deep Asar, the Asar, Yehela Hono Kon Shamaraba, Hina Vahista Barahami, Kayan Arifin, Mizana Rabicha, Kanamikadamavahaim, Jivishmaya, Vimro, Amen, Yehe Shamaraba, Min Shamaya, the Kaims of Malenu, Yalko Yisrael, Vimro, Amen. Koysa Shal Vimrema, Piasa Shal Malenu, Yalko Yisrael, Vimro, Amen.
Night of Jewish history. We have tonight is the yard site of Yisrael Salanter. So there we go. Yisrael Salanter, his name was Rabbi Yisrael Lipkin. He lived years 1810 to 1883. Yisrael Salanter, the founder of Musar, the movement. Yeah. All right, get back into the learning. Continuing in the laws, finishing the laws of this guy, Guf, physical injury. So, halacha 9. So, test. A person who is involved. Oh, we did that one already. We did test. We're up to 10. It has been a custom. It was a custom for the 7 elders of the city, the people who were elected directly by the people of the city, to set fines in cases of injuries, insults, and the like. However, they must not do anything independently of the basin, since in regard to these matters, there are many diverse laws, and they may not impose a fine greater than what the halacha imposes. They should not also treat the dignity of the people lightly. We're saying the idea that the people who are set in the city, as the elders of the city, to take care of everything in the city, with injuries, insults, and all the negative matters that happen to the city, they must not do anything independently without the basin, obviously the Jewish court giving a verdict and a ruling. Because in these matters, there's so many different laws, and obviously you got to look at the basin first. Basin, the Jewish courts will obviously tell you go according to the Torah. All the different laws that the Torah mandates in this situation, whether a person steals, or if he injures another person, like we just spoke about, or insulting, like yesterday's chumash on Nasvarim, abusing and insulting with words. All these different situations have to go to the basin. Can't just take the elders of the city cannot just take these fines as their own matters against their own accounts. They have to also have basin involved. The closing one of this section of physical injury and physical damages. When a woman has severe complications from childbirth, as long as the fetus is unborn, he hasn't given birth yet, it may be destroyed either with medicine or with instruments. This is the very controversial one. For as long as it's unborn, it's not considered a living soul. In order to save the life of the mother, permitted to, I guess you could say, rid of the baby, for it's like someone attempting to take the life of another. Obviously, this law is very complicated. There's a lot to talk about with that. But it's saying the idea for the baby is that you shouldn't interfere with it, because you're, like, in a way, you're interfering with a life, obviously. You can't sacrifice one life for another. And this is the way of nature. So now we get into the laws of borrowing and hiring. Now that we learned about damages, this is also in the 6th parsha. The idea, we know in the 6th parsha there are 4, it says in the Gemara there are 4 types of watchmen, 4 guards. We have the Shomer Chinam. He is the one who guards for free, no payment taken. You have the Shomer Sachar, the watchman who guards for payment. So you pay someone to watch your article, whatever it is, while you're on vacation, or you're not home, whatever it is, it's your dog, or it's whatever it is that you're watching. And then you have the renter, socher, someone who rents an object from you, and then the shoel, a borrower, somebody who borrows an object, and each one of them have different laws, which ones they'll be obligated for if something happens, and which they'll be exempt from. For example, the shomer chinam, if, for example, he was negligent, and let's say he was watching the neighbor's dog. The neighbor says, "I'm going away for the week. I'm going on vacation. Can you watch my dog for a week?" He says, "Sure." He says, "I'll do it for free. I won't take any payment from you. We're good friends. I'm just gonna." So now he has certain laws, according to the Gemara, which he has to follow. And one of them is the idea of pshia, negligence. If for whatever reason he was negligent with the animal, whatever object he's given, he is obligated to pay if anything happens to this animal. But let's say the animal gets stolen or lost. That's not really in his control, and he's not getting paid for his services. He's just watching the guy's animal for free. So he's not responsible for that. And then another case I also won't be responsible for is a case of ones. Ones means a freak accident which is completely beyond his control. So if we're in Florida, let's say a hurricane happens and somehow the dog disappears in the hurricane. He's not responsible. It's a freak accident. It's not something that he can take care of. Obviously, if it was something that was in his control, then it might fall under the category of pshia, of negligence. And if he was negligent, then he would be obligated to pay. And the 4th category in that is, let's say, for example, an animal, but there will be other cases as well. Mesa machmas malacha, which means it dies from work, meaning the animal was set to work, and it wasn't in his control, just from too much work, the animal died. Now you might argue, and the rabbis do argue in Gemara, that you could say maybe that the working killed the animal, or you could say that it was completely natural. It's natural for an animal to be put to work, and if it dies on the job, that's it, And then there are three other categories. The shomer sachar is probably the least of the most strict one, because he's getting paid for his watching the object. He's getting paid for it. He's getting paid for his service. So he's pretty much responsible for everything. I believe the one thing he's not responsible for is the onus, the right? Yeah. The borrower. So that was the one, the paid watchman. The shoel is pretty much tied for everything, right? Besides things like that. Dying from work. Yeah. So anyways, let's go into the laws of borrowing and hiring. If you borrow or rent an animal or other articles from your neighbor, you're not permitted to lend them or rent them to another party without the consent of the owner. Owner tells you, like we just said, I'm going on vacation for the week. Please watch my dog. It is not in your volition. Like you can't go and take this dog and bring it over to your other friends and say, hey, you go watch him for 2 days also. I'll pay you. You can't do that. He put you in charge of watching his dog. You're not permitted to lend him out to other parties. Even in the case of, let's say, sacred books. He says, can you watch my svarim, my sacred holy books while I go away? The lending of which is meritorious act. Obviously, it's very meritorious act to lend holy books to somebody. We do not assume that the owner would want to have a mitzvah done with his property, for it's possible he does not want his property in possession of someone who may not be trustworthy in his eyes. So you can't just say, I know this guy, he knows you can trust me using his chumash or a sitter. I'm going to let other people in the shul use it, because I know he's a nice guy, he would let everybody use it. Not necessarily. Maybe he likes the sitter very much, or the chumash, whatever it is, and he doesn't want to be given over to the people of the city or the school, whatever the situation is. So certainly, whether it's a holy book or whatever it is. So maybe he doesn't want his property being handed over left and right. However, if you borrow a book, you may allow someone else to study from it in your house, provided he studies from it alone and not two of you together. Interesting. If it's known that the owner is accustomed to trust this other party in such matters, the borrower is permitted to lend it to him, and the renter is permitted to rent it to him. So if the case is, it's known that the owner is accustomed to, in general, he says, everybody can use my book, no problem. It's open to the public. Then the borrower is permitted to lend it to him, and the renter is permitted to rent it from him. It's a mitzvah to pay the wages of a hired workman on time. If you delay such payment, you're transgressing a negative commandment, as it says. It says on the same day, that you're on the same day you should give him his wages, and the sun shall not go down. Meaning, when you hire somebody for work, the mitzvah is to pay them on time, and if you don't, you're actually transgressing a negative commandment that, like it says in the Torah, that you should give him his wages on time. The sun shall not go down, meaning don't wait till the sun goes down to give him his wages. Make sure you give him his money before he goes home. Now, if it's a weekly salary, that's a different story. But it's also a mitzvah to pay for the hire of an animal or utensil at the proper time. And if you delay such payment, you're also transgressing a negative commandment, as it says. You shall not oppress a hired worker who is poor and needy. In the same day, you must give him his wage. Now, what is the proper time? What does that mean? Give the money in the proper time. If the day has passed and you still do not pay him, you're transgressing the mitzvah of you transgress the mitzvah of what we said before, the same day you should give him his wage and the sun shall not go down because you waited till the day was over. If he finishes his work during the evening, he should be paid during the night. If the night passed and you had not paid him, so even he has the night shift on the job, and the night passes by and you still haven't paid him, now you're transgressing a negative commandment that the wages of your worker should not abide with you all the night until the morning. Believe it or not, there are mitzvahs for everything. You don't give the money during the day, there's a negative commandment for that. You don't give it at night, there's another one. They're going to get you every time. Similarly,
that's if you don't have an agreement to pay.
Oh, there's definitely. Yeah. But this is talking about a daily
one guy comes
salary.
on Monday.
Yeah. And it's a paid watchman, paid work. So a workman who is hired by the week, month, or year. So now, let's say it's not by the day, but it's by the week, the month, or the year. If he has finished his work during the day, he should be paid during that day. Meaning, he gets paid weekly, but his job is a 9 to 5. Finishes at 5, and 5 is usually in the daytime still. Therefore, he should get paid in the day. If he finishes during the night, let's say his job is goes through the night, then he should be paid during that night and not later. Also, if you give your garment to a tailor to repair, so you bring your nice suit to the tailor, you want him to repair, whether it's a rip or sew on a button, and you give him a set price, and the tailor returns it to you during the day, you must pay him during that day, not at night. If he returns it to you at night, you must pay him during the night, because you got to go based on the mitzvah. The mitzvah is pay him for his services during the day, then during the day if he finishes working. If he finishes working for you at night, pay him during the night. However, as long as the garment remains with the tailor, although the garment is finished and the work has been completed, you're not in violation of the law, even if it's in the tailor's possession for many days. And even if the tailor has notified you to bring the money and take the garment, nevertheless, you're not in violation of the law. Because as long as it's with the tailor, the job isn't done yet, you don't have to pay him for his services yet. You have not transgressed the law of the wages of your worker should not abide with you till the morning, that the sun shall not go down on it, unless the worker demands his wages. And you have the money to pay him. But if the worker did not demand his wages, so he didn't actually come to you, the boss, asking for his wages, or he demanded his wages, but you do not have the money, you're not in violation of the law. Nevertheless, a scrupulous, careful person will borrow money to pay his worker in the proper time, for he's poor and sets his heart upon his wage. He knows, I have to pay my worker on time. I'm going to do everything in my power, even if the person says he's poor. I'm going to do everything I can to get the money to pay my workers, because it's only the right thing. They're working for me. They should get their payment on time. If your system is not to pay the workers until after a certain sum is due, even if they demand a small sum, which they have undoubtedly already earned, nevertheless, if you refuse to give it to them, you are not guilty of transgressing that law, which we spoke about, of not withholding the payment until morning or until the sun goes down. Since it's known that this is your system of payment, you wait until, if you have a certain cap, you have a certain limit of how much money they get, your workers will get weekly for their salary, and therefore you're not considered holding back payment from him because you have a certain amount that he has to reach before you could actually give it to him. And since it's known that this is your system of payment, and on such conditions, they hired themselves out to you. If a hired workman was working for you and spoiled the article in which he had worked, so he ruined the article which he is working on for you, even if it was caused by his negligence and a matter of which he is legally bound to make reparation for, it's a mitzvah for you to waive your legal rights and release him from liability, as it says. You may walk in the way of good men. If the worker is a poor man and he ruins the article which he's working on for you, and he has no food, the mitzvah to give him his wages, as it says, keep the path of the righteousness. It says, and the path of the righteous is to keep the way of Hashem, to practice charity and justice to an even greater degree than is required by law. So it's saying that one of your employees is working on a certain project for you, and there's a certain object involved, and they ruined the object in the process of making, like, in the middle of the project, that you should waive all the legal rights and release him from liability and not make him pay for it. Yeah. Just as the employer is admonished not to rob the worker of his wages, not to delay payment, so the worker admonished not to cheat his employer or waste any time at work. He must work with all his strength, his ability, as our father Yaakov said. He said, "In Lavan Garti, that I lived with Lavan." Here, later it says, he must work with all his strength, as Yaakov said, "I served your father with all my strength." Yaakov, we know, worked for 7 years. Then Lavan tricked him because he wanted to marry Rachel, and Lavan tricked him and put Leah under the chuppah. And then he had to work for another 7 years to get Rachel. So it was a 14 years total. Therefore, so Yaakov said that I served your father with all my strength. Therefore, a worker is not permitted to work all night and hire himself out during the day because he is weakened by the night work. So best thing is to either choose the night shift or the day shift, not to do both. Similarly, it's not permitted to work your animal at night and hire it out for work during the day. A worker is not permitted to starve or afflict himself, for this weakens his physical strength and he will not be able to do the work for his employer properly. This law also applies to a teacher. Finish those laws and time for marriage. Yeah.
Adonai Hoshia, Melech Nini Vim Karenu, Adonai Hoshia, Melech Nini Vim Karenu, Adonai Hoshia, Melech Nini Vim Karenu, Yiskada Viskada Shemei Rabba, Yom Adi Bakus Everything Makusay, Yatsmak, what kind of a karmish Yikai, Yikai, Konavina Kanavaka, Kabis Yisrael, but Galam Yisman Kari Vimarame. Yesh may Rabbi Mevairach, the Mumai, Spray Bishop, Spray Bishop, Visa, say, Sada Visa, Visa, good job, Rico. Yea, let me cover Casa Bishira, such as Casa Nechamasa, the Mira Bialma, Vimarame, Baraku Asadina, Hambaira, Barakam, Bairach, the Island, Barakatadino, Hinima, Faila, I'm a shepherd. Marion, maybe Lila, Mudvin, Lila, nice, which my Barakatadino, Maariv, I have a soil and base shot at the term. Him Kayane, very communion, they give you Mabalila, the Vasco to Sumi Menedilla, in Barakatadina. Shema Yisrael, Adina, Elohim, Adina, Yechad. We have to Asa, Denial, Haka, the Rabaka, the Fona Shaka, the Yadaka, they had Grima, Ela, Shanafim, Sakahayam, the Zachabish, the Necha, the Bartabam, the Sakha, the Laka, the Derek, the Shaka, the Necha, the Shatam, the Osa Yadaka, the West Mininacha, the Amasus, the Sakha, the Sharaka, by Yatmish. No, Elohim MS. The Manicos, Cameline, Kyoto, and Vince Master, but not Misha. Marcus, Brasan Kibla, Moshe Ben Israel, Khanisha Skaraba, Vimmer Fulam. Nikamaka, Baladana, Nikamaka, the Bakaris, Marcus, Skaraba, okay, with Misha, Alien, the Emerald. Deny look, we are in love. If not, Marky Patton is second, we go in a custom menu. Barakatadina, I go, oh, Yisrael. Ashkevena bin Shambhan. Which more sustainable in a kind of Mishal Massacre Island, Kirshman and Maslina Mata, Barakatadina, Shomer Aman Israel, Ad. Scalavi Scadash, Mayra, but Yamadi Bakas and the Kmaku said, Yatsmak, kind of a Karmishika, the Kayak and the kind of a Katakabi Sishawa, but Galavis Makari for Rami. The Heish may rather than they ask the Maya, he's very Shabak, he's very some of these last say, he's Sarah, he's Salash, make a good job with them. The A, let me cover Kasabishira, such as Kasim Nakamasa, the Mira Miyama, Bimarame. Skada Shmei Rabba, Yom the breakfast of the Maku said, Yats Mak, we're kind of a Kermishite, the Kayak and we can look at the Bessishra, but God is my Kari in the Romani. Hey Shmei Rabba, Mitayra, the Olamel Maya, he's very Shabak, he's very Vishama Visa, say, Visara Visa Visa, Shmei good Chaprit. Hey, let me cover Kasbishira, such as Katmanamasa, the Miriam, the Miramen, take a bus and bus and the Shah behind you, Vishmai, the Miramen. Yehesh l'marav minchamaya v'chem t'malini v'akray shalom v'maramein v'yis Hashem v'mrayma v'yas Hashem malini v'akray shalom v'maramein Leinu l'shabeach v'dayna kol says Yakin the kabla thought and I will hang V'nei lo aved machul kol haaretz v'mehedin hayachad yishma yachad Skada v'skada shmei Rabba Yama divrachu sevi amlik machul sevi atzmak v'kanei v'kari v'shikay v'kayei kon v'yamekan v'kayei v'chabis yishrael v'adala v'zman kari v'yamramei v'hei shmei Rabba v'chayra v'yayel v'mei amaya V'ek v'shabach v'spar v'shraman v'snase v'sadar v'sala v'sala shmei v'kshav v'yei la mikaver kasa v'shirasa tishkasa v'nechamasa d'miram v'yama v'mramei Yehi Shalom Rabba Michamaya, V'chaim Tov Malini, V'yakro Yisrael, V'maramein, V'yisa Shalom V'mrayma, V'yasa Shalom Malini, V'yakro Yisrael, V'maramein, Atira Mipach Apisa, V'yishara Shashem Kisavai, V'yisarei Savis, V'yifar Dachir Dachir V'yakami, Emmanuel, V'yazignani, V'yatzeva, V'yesvo, V'yasisi, V'yasa, V'yisrael V'yamalei, Sadikim, Yadishmecha, Yeshu Sharem, Esmanecha, Machashim, Sunasumaya, Hemel, maybe Antibench, Parla, Kotar, the Kanavan Aksham, Resmers, Barfus, Charlotte, Pikabelam, Termis, Shnemar, and I have man, Sikta, Yakatara, the other. Iskada, Shmei Rabba, the Yoma, Divraku, Savi, Amlik, Maku, Savi, Asmak, Vakane, the Kari, the Shikai, the Kai, Kon, the Yamekan, the Kai, the Obis, Yisroel, Bakala, Bisman Kari, the Hey, Shmei Rabba, Yah, Maya, Break, Shabbat, Inspire, Vishama, Visnas, Visar, Visala, Visala, Shmei, Kucha, Brekum, Yela, Mikover Kasa, Vishirasa, Tishkasa, Venekamasa, the Miram Yama, Vimaramein, Ayashara, Vyarbana, Vyatmide, Hein, Vyalkotamide, Smide, Hein, Vyalkama, and the Steam Vyaraisa, DVS Radin, Diva Kolasar, Vyasar, Yehela, Hono, Consul Maraba, Hina Vahista, Varachamin. Kayan Arikin, Masana Rabika, Kanamika Behind Jivishmaya, Vimaramein, Yehi Shlama Rabba Michamaya, the Times of Malay, Yakoi Shoel, Vimaramein, Paisa Shal Vimrama, Yasa Shal Malay, Yakoi Shoel, Vimaramein. What's that mean?
Oh, one second. Wait. Quick announcements.